Our Drasha today is sponsored by Karen Peter Weissman in memory of Peter's mother's Shloshim, which is taking place right now. You step off the Shloshim, Sarah Bashlomo. Sponsored by Sharon and Michael Glass in memory of the yahrzeit of Sharon's mother, Mrs. Ida Cohn, Chaya Bas Avram Baruch, Allah Shalom, and by Yefim and Lena Fleischmacher, in memory of Yefim's father, whose Shloshim was earlier today, Mr. Leo Fleischmacher, Lazer Ben Chaim. So we find ourselves now in almost consecutive weeks. I have a newfound appreciation for the Balei Kriya and Shul. And I find it's important to learn some of the halachos related to Kriyas HaTorah, the halachos related to the Safras, because we can't have the Torah during this time. And I have a newfound appreciation for the Balei Kriya as I am laning every single Shabbos morning at my Shabbos table. I wait for my kids to wake up. I lane at the table. And we've had numerous double parshas in a row, right? Tazria Mitzorah, Acharei Mos-Kedoshim. Now in 2 weeks again, I think Bahar Bechukosai is going to be another double parsha. And I'd like to analyze that notion of the double parsha, specifically the Haftorah. What is the rule when it comes to the Haftorah? Which Haftorah do you lane? Which Haftorah gets thrown aside, and maybe we wait another year to lane that Haftorah? And which Haftorah do we lane? So if you notice here, I just took a picture of, this is Parshas Acharei Mos. That's the Haftorah for Acharei Mos. It's psukim from Amos Perek Tes. Amos is in Treyasar, and the Haftorah in Parshas Kedoshim comes from Yecheskel Chaf Beis. So what's the halacha? Which Haftorah do we lane? From the first parsha or from the second parsha? The Ramah at the end of Chelak Dalet in the Or Chaim says very, very clearly and succinctly, he says, when you're reading two different parshios, the Haftorah comes from the last one. That is true 99% of the time. And Rabbi Gershon's on the call, the Gabbai par excellence. He will tell you there is one exception to that rule. There is one time during the year where we do not lane from the second parsha. The Haftorah does not come from the second parsha, but it comes from the first. And that is our double parsha. When it's Acharei Mos-Kedoshim, we lane the Haftorah of Acharei Mos, right? Bilvad ba'Acharei Mos u'Kedoshim to maftiren halo kivnei kushiyim. We lane the Haftorah from Amos, shehi Haftorah's Acharei Mos. That is the psak of the Ramah. Parenthetically, there is a major machlokes here. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't agree. Sfardim lane Kedoshim. The Levush, one of the major Ashkenazi poskim, disagrees with the Ramah, but ultimately the Mishnah Berurah, Ramosha Feinstein, the Stipler, the Chazon Ish, I think everybody today lanes the Haftorah of Parshas Acharei Mos. Now, why is that? Why does this break the rule? Why does Acharei Mos break the rule? So the Mishnah Berurah gives us a hint to why this is. They say the following, it's in bold right here, Mipnei Haftorah shal Parsha Shniya, the Haftorah for Parsha Kedoshim, Maskeres, Mitoevos Yerushalayim. It reminds us of the abominations, of the horrific Averos that occurred during the time of Bias Rishon, the Averos that occurred and it caused the Jewish people to be exiled from their land. And because of that, right, we avoid reading the Parsha, the Haftorah for Kedoshim, because it talks disparagingly, negatively about Yerushalayim, right? Just yesterday was Yom HaAtzmaut, right? And we avoid talking disparagingly, negatively about Yerushalayim, and we speak more positively. Rabbi Soloveitchik could be found right here. Rabbi Soloveitchik's yahrzeit was just a few weeks ago on Chol HaMoed Pesach. He spells this out even deeper. He says, if you look and analyze the psukim in Amos, the Navi Amos was talking to the Jewish people while they were in exile, while they're in Galus. And there was a fear, there was a deep concern, as you know, we can relate to this. When are we ever going to get out of this thing? When is it ever going to happen that is there going to be a hope? Is there a light at the end of this tunnel? Is there an end to all of this? And what do the final psukim in Amos tell us? V'shafti es shavus ami Yisrael. Hashem promises us And we know that when the Navi says something, it's positive, it's going to come true. Hashem promises us that you're going to return to Eretz Yisrael. Amazing, we're living in a time when this is happening. Uvanu arim nishamos v'yashvu v'natu chramim. You're going to build cities, you're going to plant vineyards, you're going to enjoy the wine of Eretz Yisrael. I try to be careful when I buy the wine for the house. We try to buy wine that is from Eretz Yisrael. V'shatu et yainam v'sasu ganos v'achlu es peirehem, and you're going to enjoy the fruit of Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Soloveitchik says the nevuah of Amos in Haftorah for Acharei Mos is positive. It's not just consolation, it's not the Nechama, but it tells us in a positive way what's going to happen, what's going to occur in the future. As opposed to Yecheskel. Yecheskel, the Haftorah for Kedoshim, paints a very dark picture of what was going to occur during the times, what happened that led to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Hadamim v'odates kol ha'to'ivoseha, says the Navi Yecheskel, I'm going to tell you all the abominations. Literally, he's going to delineate and describe every single wrong thing that happened in in so many details. And says the Rav, we learn from here such an important lesson. When we have an option to speak negatively or to speak positively, we always go towards the positive. We always lean towards the positive. That's our role. That's our goal. And I'll show you how this can change somebody's attitude in life. That's why we choose, right? It's not a mistake. In the bulletin this week, in whatever shul you're davening in, we lane the Haftorah from Acharei Mos to remind us that choose the positive way. Always choose to look at the world in a positive way. And I was so blown away by a book that I'm reading right now. It's called Positivity Bias, written by Rav Hirsch Kalmanson, all about the life of the Rebbe. It's almost like a PhD thesis about what the Rebbe represented, interactions, his letters, his sichos, everything all together. And he writes there, according to Chassidus, we each have the power to define and influence our experience based on our perception. Knowing this with every fiber of his being, the Rebbe rigorously developed and consistently expressed what I would call a profound and programmatic positivity bias to life, to the Torah, and to people, leading him to seek and to find pure and positive essence within everyone and everything. And he goes to prove, both scientifically and very pragmatically, very practically, that when we choose to speak positively, when we choose to look at the world in a positive way, to look at our spouses, our children, our neighbor, the guy we sit next to in shul, the people that work for us, the people we work for, in a positive way, then it changes who we are in our essence. And it first starts with the way that we speak. We just said yesterday in Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut, He'emanti ki adaber. Literally means, I believe because I speak. I think I heard this from Meir Goldwich. He'emanti ki adaber. Because I speak about emunah, my emunah becomes greater. He'emanti, my emunah, my belief in Hashem becomes greater because we talk about it. We are, in many ways, what we speak about. Our children pick up on this, no question about it, no doubt about it. What we speak about, what we're passionate about, they pick up on. But not only them, it affects us. It affects us. It is worth pointing out that the Rebbe's approach to dwelling on the positive, what we refer to throughout this book as positivity bias, was never meant to be a naive whitewashing or covering up of actual reality. This is not saying that we're looking at the world with rose-colored glasses, that everything is good and chilled and don't worry about it. He says that's called optimism. That's called optimism bias. Optimism bias is saying, I can go to the store without a mask. I can go to the store without gloves. I can just, walk into other people's homes. I'm not going to get the coronavirus. It's not going to happen. That's optimism bias. He goes, that's looking at the world in, beyond nature. That's not something that we're talking about right now. Positivity bias is engaging in the world, understanding ultimately that there is negative things that occur in the world, but trying to look at the world in a way that everything has a positivity. Everything has an ability to be spun and understood in a positive way. And ultimately, that has a deep effect on us and everybody around us. One of my mentors and Rabbi Shalom Baum of Keter Torah shared this with me. The Emes Yaakov Kamenetsky says, actually, this is the role of the names of Haftorah throughout the year. If you look at we have certain Shabbosim that have special names. For example, Shabbos Hagadol, Shabbos Nachamu, Shabbos Chazon. They all have special names, and they're all based on words in the Haftorah. But the truth is, Rav Yaakov points out that that's not the correct word in the Haftorah. If we're going based on the first word in the Haftorah, then the first word in the Haftorah for Shabbos Hagadol is Ve'arva. But we want to make it positive. The goal of the Haftorah was to give the Jewish people Nechama. Leave them off. The Kriyas Torah may have been difficult. We might have been reading about the Tochacha. We might read about the licentious relationships in Acharei, Mos-Kedoshim. But the Haftorah was to leave us off with a positive note. That's why even the names, Chazal were careful about the names of the Shabbosim, that they would be Shabbosim with positive names, right? Shabbos Nachamu, consolation. Shabbos Chazon, the Shabbos of vision, and not the Shabbos of Eicha. Eicha, that's destruction. That's depression. That's not what we focus on. That's not the words that we want to choose to use when we are talking, even in shul. Not talking in shul, but talking about shul. Tal Ben Shachar, Dr. Tal Ben Shachar, if you want to know really about happiness and positivity, the man to read about, he has numerous books, is Dr. Tal Ben Shachar. He is one of our brothers. He is an Israeli. He teaches the most popular class in Harvard. It's positive psychology and happiness. He's a world's leading expert on happiness. So he shares something amazing here. Where does happiness come from? He's the world's expert. Where does happiness come from? So I would argue it's where I was born into, what situation, was I rich, was I poor, was I smart, was I stupid, what skills did I have, was I an athlete, was I not an athlete, was I a cheer, right? What was it? Where does happiness come from? So look at this study. It's unbelievable. 50% of your happiness based on study comes from your parents, comes from the way that your parents, interacted with you. Both of my parents are on this call right now, and I think my mother-in-law is on this call right now. I have to be careful. Thank God, I had a very, very good childhood. So, Baruch Hashem. So 50% comes from our parents and how they raised us as children, and as they raised us and how our homes were set up. Right? We are doing, right, Yeshivat Zoom. We had a discussion in our home, right? For those that don't know, we have 5 girls. So we were like, what would our yeshiva name be? So we said, for sure, we're not a yeshiva. We have 5 girls. We're Drasha at Markowitz during this time period. So we 50% of happiness can come from the way you were raised with your parents. 40% depends on our activities, our outlook. You have good hobbies. You have healthy eating habits. You exercise. You have outlets in life beyond work. Notice work is not necessarily here. Whether you're wealthy or not, what you have in your bank is not here. And 10% is your circumstance. 10% of the defining, right? If you want to talk about it in the Rebbe's terms, how would we say this? 90%, right? 90% is not based on circumstance. It's not based on your circumstance. It's based on other things. And that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. We can determine whether we're happy or not. We can make that happen for ourselves. So I just have several different points to share with you about this. Number one comes from the Alei Shor. How do we express positivity in our own lives? First comes from the Alei Shor, Rav Shlomo Volbe. Rav Volbe was somebody that had a very deep influence in my life. I met him once when I was Shana Aleph in Reshit, and I've been learning his Sfarim ever since. So he writes, Hamaschil Lumod Musar. When one's learning Musar, what's Musar all about? He says, you have to know your positive traits. You have to know your skills. You have to know what you yourself are good at. You have to learn your milos, he writes. You have to know your milos. Musar is not fire and brimstone and beat yourself. You have to know your milos. That's number one. Secondly, pasuk in our parsha, B'tzedek tishmod et amisecha. We learn from that pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim that we have to be dan es chavercha lekavschos. We have to judge each one of our friends favorably. Each person. That includes our children. That includes our wife. There's a great article in the New York Times. It came out on March 16th, 2020. It's called Marriage in the Age of Corona. Underneath the subtitle was, guess what? You're both right. Marriage in the Age of Corona, you are both right. So listen to this. Says the Rabbi. This is back from the book in Positivity Bias. He says, when we're malami, right, what does it mean when you try to figure out whether they did something murky and you want to say they did something good? So the way we say that is we're malami tzchus. It's a limud tzchus. Now, what does that mean, says the Rabbi? Limud tzchus literally means the study of another's merits. It's a limud. We have to really think. And, for parents that are on this Zoom right now and thinking about with your children 24/7, it's a limud tzchus. You have to really think about it and be malami tzchus to your child as to what they're doing and think of it in a positive way. It's a limud. We have to learn. And third, the Rebbe would say this, but this is from everybody, compliments are free, right? Please take a compliment. They're all free, right? There's studies out of Harvard that if we share positive comments with people that we are close with each and every day of our lives, at least one, if up to three, it makes a tremendous difference on their lives. But it's not about their lives only. It changes us. It changes the way we look and perceive at the world. And then in addition, gratitude, thinking about the good things that we have in our lives and being thankful and being grateful. Someone just we dropped off a challah by somebody's home. They sent us a whole letter. That's somebody that I need to learn from, that was so grateful that they wrote the letter, they put it in the envelope, put the stamp on it. That's amazing. Positive speech. And lastly is reframing. The ability to reframe murky situations and to reframe it in the positive way. Most things that we encounter are not completely negative. Most people that we encounter, most of the time, have good intentions in mind when they do something. It's our job to reframe it in the positive way, not just for them, but for us too. And reframing helps because we have the ability to reframe what happened already in the past, and we could change the past by reframing it in a positive way. I'd like to conclude with a story. This is one of the chapters in the book. Anyone know who this is? Next, talking to the Rebbe. Put on the chat. Anybody know?
Elie Wiesel.
Elie Wiesel. Okay. Is that Neil? Okay. Shkoyach.
Yeah.
Okay. Shkoyach. Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel I'll tell you what year it was, in the early 1960s. Elie Wiesel had an amazing interaction with the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he said changed his life. He said that his writing up until then was very dark. It was very angry. And he went to the Rebbe and they had an encounter and they were talking in circles the entire night. He was asking questions, they were talking, and it wasn't getting anywhere. It was heated, it was angry, it was emotional, but there was no substance to this discussion. And the Rebbe kept on asking Elie Wiesel, what do you expect of me? You came to me, you called me up, you came to my office, you're here, 770, what do you want from me? And he kept on saying nothing. I don't want anything from you. And finally, now listen to this. This is amazing. He said, you asked me what I expect of you, and I expect nothing, right? But I was wrong. Elie Wiesel says to the Rebbe, I came here for one thing. I came here because I want you to make me cry. And he says, and he describes in one of his books, In Night, the death of his father in Buchenwald. And he admitted that moment when he saw his father die and was murdered in Buchenwald, it was so traumatizing that ever since that moment, he's been robbed of tears. He didn't cry in that moment, and that gives him the greatest grief, the inability to cry. The heart had petrified, the fountainhead of tears had dried up. And he says, Rebbe, I came to you because I need you to make me cry. And the Rebbe said something to him that changed his life forever. The Rebbe said, that's not enough. It's not enough for you, Elie Wiesel. I'm not going to teach you how to cry. I shall teach you to sing. And he says that changed his outlook on life. He realized his role in life was not to be angry. His role in life was to sing and share positive moments. I'll just share with you. This is really, really beautiful. Right? The Rebbe changed and shifted the whole focus of his life from a life of crying and anger to a life of positivity and light and singing. By attempting to shift the central point of national focus and self-identification away from the colossal tragedy of the Holocaust, and he directed it instead towards a redemptive future and a joyful present. The Rebbe chose not to devalue or trivialize the historic loss, but he only worked to ensure that it not to come exclusively define and confine the way the Jewish people view their past, their present, and the future. It doesn't define who we are. And Rabbi Sachs says so beautifully that he had read many works of post-Holocaust Jewish theology, and they all ask the same question. What unites us? What unites the Jewish people? With all of our divisiveness and arguments, we don't get along. What unites us? And so many people, they say, and before Corona, maybe many of us would have answered, anti-Semitism. That's what unites us, because other people hate us. The Rebbe taught us the opposite message. And I conclude with this. What unites us, he taught us, is that not that other people don't like us, but that God loves us. That every one of us is a fragment of the divine presence. And together we are the physical presence of God on earth. Surely that message, spiritual, mystical as it is so much more powerful and so much more noble than the alternative. That's positivity bias. That's taking a situation, looking at our life right now, not looking at the loss, and acknowledging the loss, acknowledging how difficult it is, but trying to spin that darkness into light in our own lives. That's by being grateful, by acknowledging, by reframing, by speaking in a positive tone. It doesn't just change and affect the people around us, but I guarantee you it will change us. Thank you, everybody, for joining this call. Yasher Koach. I'm always here. I could share the Markowitz, the sources, different type of Drasha. I'm happy to hear your feedback also. But thank you, everybody. It's great to see this.